500 is the proposed budget, okay? For 2017.
481,700? Am I
Well,
right?
that's the adjusted budget. I don't know which column you want to look at. I looked at the proposed budget on the right side.
Okay.
But it
whatever.
doesn't matter, it's all
Yeah.
one line there.
You're right.
It's coming. Got it? So there it is, Mr. Brunton's having a look.
Mileage, $190,000? Am I reading that right? Wow.
Perfect.
Can we go to the contracted services? Unless everybody else is done looking at that.
So you've looked at materials and supplies, Councillor Brunton. Any questions on that breakdown? Marlene, that is showing a decrease of 4.5% over last year's material and supplies, correct?
Correct.
Okay, Mr. Brunton, I'll leave it with you whether you have any questions or want to continue on another line.
Yeah, I'm looking at the contracted services right now.
Okay, thank you.
What's the, you have contracted services of 97,100. What is that?
That's right.
The one just under the five.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Brunton, there is a 47,000 increase in there from last year, and that was to implement the health unit audit recommendations through 2017. If you recall from the report that was provided late in 2016, we have put in a grant to offset that for 2016. We have not heard from the province, and we would be putting in a grant moving forward for this expenditure as well.
Okay, can we go to the seminars and training one?
I had a question on the contracted, if I may, while it's there. Why is the postage up so much? I think
Oh,
it's
geez.
still there was 1,700, yes, up a fair, almost 800% increase. Why have we jumped so high?
Sorry, I don't really know how to do this. The postage used to be done through interdepartmental charges. Now it's been taken out of interdepartmental charges and being charged as an operating expense.
So somewhere we would see a reduction in the interdepartmental
Yes.
cost then. That was in the budget last year, now it's, okay. Forgot that, and that was mentioned to us, thank you. Okay, Mr. Brunton, you want to continue?
Seminars and training.
On this, Councillor Height?
Yeah.
You have anything on the contracted services?
Mine's on mileage.
On what?
Mileage.
Well, that was in the last one, wasn't it?
That was just on there a few seconds
Okay,
ago.
go ahead and ask it, go ahead.
Okay. I'm stunned that we do 417,000 kilometers in this department in mileage, and that's down. We could probably buy limos and drivers. I'd like to see a list of the top 5 users, and maybe it's better that we buy them a car. It's $187,000 we pay in kilometers for driving around. Something needs to change there, I think.
We're getting the mileage brought up.
I'll wait.
Thank you. There it is. the bottom there. The question is, the mileage is proposed to be down a little bit from last year in this budget, but Marlene, the question from Councillor Height is, it seems like a lot of mileage. Is there a way that could be looked at to reduce it?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, there is a lot of mileage, but please remember that we are going across Haldimand and Norfolk, and that a lot of our services are within the community, so staff do need to get to these. We will continue to look at processes to decrease the mileage. We did do some this year, and we'll work towards decreasing it in 2017 as well.
Sonnenberg?
Thank you. Through you to Marlene. Would it be safe to say that a lot of this mileage is caseworkers going out to deal with the vulnerable people in our society?
Through the mayor to Councillor Sonnenberg, most of this is related to our public health inspectors who are going out and inspecting all of the food premises, nurses going out into the community. This is our staff going out to fulfill the requirements of the public health mandate.
Councillor Brunn, I think. Oh,
Well, yeah, I didn't realize we could break
What-
this down.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, here we go, healthy babies. Am I reading this right? The mileage for that's $40,000? Am I reading that right?
Yes, you are.
Wow.
That's for the staff that go out to deliver that service to the clients. And again, as Marlene Miranda said, that covers mileage that for those staff attending at places in Haldimand as well as in Norfolk.
Okay, sorry?
Okay, Councillor Geisens?
Well, sorry. I think what we need to look at, when you got a mileage of $400,000 or $40,000, I think it's time to look, I don't know if that's one person, two persons, or whatever, but would we not maybe be better off to lease a vehicle or look at something that when I worked, I got my own vehicle, and it was cheaper for them to lease the vehicle and provide the gas and than it was to pay mileage. So at 45 cents, and all I was getting before that was even about 30 cents with the province at a certain after 5,000 kilometers. So theoretically, have we ever looked at trying to save some money by looking at leased vehicles?
Through the mayor to Councillor Geisens, in my tenure, I have not done that. That would present some logistical challenges, as most of our staff are out most of the time, so getting access to limited vehicles would be problematic.
I'm not suggesting that you would have those vehicles available. They'd be there. It's not that you got to go find out and run to one of them that you can lease them. That basically, you lease them on a regular basis. And the vehicle that I had, it was through Excel or something like that. And once it reached 110,000, you got a new vehicle because basically they sold them at that mileage. So theoretically, it seemed to be cheaper for the province. Why wouldn't it be cheaper for us?
On this subject, I have Candy and then Mr. Ford. Webb?
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of Council may recall that annually when we bring forward our mileage reimbursement report, that there is a section in that report that speaks to specifically the cost of leasing a vehicle from the Norfolk County fleet. I believe that the cost for a small pickup truck is approximately $19,000 per year. We're currently in the process of rewriting or preparing the report for submission to council next week. What we're also doing for next week is we're looking at the cost of leasing a small vehicle, a small car, as opposed to a pickup truck, as well as we will be looking at other options in terms of leasing. So certainly we do look at that, and what we do in comparison is we speak with finance and we get the mileage reimbursement that was paid to the highest, the individual that travels the most number of kilometers to ensure that it's still more economical to provide the mileage reimbursement. So certainly, staff will be doing a thorough analysis of that for the next report.
Mr. Ford?
Let me take a minute, Mr. Mayor, and put this whole piece in context. It's 400 and let's say it's 450,000 kilometers. That's a little on the high side, but let's say that's what it is. If you divide that by 80 people, which is the number of inspectors and all other types that are wandering all over the place, the average works out to be about 5,600 kilometers per each one of those people. If you multiply that by our current mileage rate, that's about $2,300, $2,400 for each one of those 80 people. Now, the problem with averages and the problem with the percentages that I did right now is that you've got some people that drive a lot more than that, and you got some people that drive a whole less than that. That's what averages are all about. But it would not be economically feasible to go out and lease a fleet of vehicles for them to use when we're paying, $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 per employee maximum, and on average $2,300. Ms. Webb talked about doing some analysis. A few years ago, we did that. We looked at, lease versus mileage. And with the cost of leasing a vehicle and providing gas and insurance and all the rest of that jazz, that cost gets up to be, $20,000+ on an annual basis, which is, probably 40,000 kilometers. So it gets to be a little cost prohibitive to go out and lease them. Yes, $190,000 is a lot of money to pay for mileage, but it's being paid to probably 80 people, 75 or 80 people that are out in the road. Works out to be $2,500 to $3,000 per. So it doesn't make economic sense to go and say, let's go and lease a bunch of vehicles. That's the point I'm trying to drive to.
Councillor Oliver? I'll get back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can see why we have, as council, have focused in on that one particular program. And my question to Ms. Miranda and staff, how many staff are involved in delivering the Healthy Babies, Healthy Children program that would require this kind of mileage? My guess is it's perhaps half a dozen or so. Would that be about right? Or
Through the mayor to Councillor Oliver, it's actually 10.3 FTEs.
Okay.
That may be a few more staff than that, so about a dozen, but it is, that's the FTE number.
so I guess to my colleagues, if you take 10 staff roughly that may be delivering the program across the 2 counties, it doesn't end up being very much per individual who's providing that service to their client. So yeah, it's a lot of money in aggregate, but it's not a lot of money per individual employee, I guess. Thank you.
I haven't forgotten you, Councillor Brunton. I'll come back to you now, and then Councillor Height.
Well, go on where the smoking mileage, I think it was in the next. And it's, was it back or ahead?
The tobacco control court program, I don't know.
No, the mileage for the smoking control program. It was on there.
Yeah, it's down.
There we go. About half, just below halfway.
So there's 1 or 2 people, I think, that are enforcing that program.
Right at the bottom. There it is, second from the bottom.
Whatever, but it's $14,400 in mileage. Complete waste of money, in my opinion. But anyways, that's a lot of money to go around and tell people not to smoke. Is it not? At least it is my mind. Your Worship, I guess we could go on forever, but I'm going to make a recommendation. I'm so upset the way the province like to dictate to us. We fund the hospital, we fund medical clinics, we fund this. And in my opinion, none of it is our responsibility. So I'm going to make a suggestion that overall increase in the health budget of 16.8, sorry,
Yes.
16.8, that it go back to staff and that they bring it back with an increase of 2 to 5% in that range. And we'll also be doing our friends in Haldeman a favor at the same time. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Want to make that a motion?
Yes, that's a motion. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Height, I recognized your hand before the motion. Go ahead.
I just wanted to comment on the mileage thing, like the healthy babies, healthy children. We're spending $40,000 and 88,000 kilometers, and there's nothing healthy about polluting all that air, that's for sure.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Brunton to send this budget back and have it looked at to be reduced to the 2 to 5% range. Is that your numbers? Okay. I'm going to get to you, Mr. County Manager. I saw Councillor Wells first, and then you, and then Councillor Columbus, in that order. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Mayor, I think it would be fair to say that obviously around this table, I would like to save money, as everybody else would. But could I, in all honesty, have a comment from staff that, is that a reasonable motion? Should we pass that motion?
Marlene?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wells, I would suggest that it's not a reasonable, and we would be coming back to council to determine what services we were going to approve, to relinquish, and we would have to be having conversations with the ministry because we would then not be filling the mandate of the public health department.
Meet the mandate of the Public Health Department. What might be the penalty with regard to that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Weld, this conversation has happened several times around this table, and I can't speak specifically, but they would potentially provide sanctions to the Board of Health. What that would look like, I think it would be dependent on what the impact of the direction was from the Board of Health.
And my last question, Mr. Mayor, with your permission, might be, and I realize that there are times when the programs that we offer where we meaning the Norfolk County taxpayers, pay more, it appears, than our share. Might I ask the reverse question, are there times when the ministry pays more on behalf of the county? So is it wash out, one hand washes the other?
Through the mayor to Councillor Well, that's a complicated question. I suspect that it does. They do pay, obviously, for over $7 million for public health, and within the Health and Social Services Department, they do provide significant funding, and in housing alone, and you'll see over the next few days, there's been a huge funding allocation that has been provided to Haldeman Norfolk. So without getting into detail, it's a very complicated question and answer. Yeah, we do benefit significantly from the multiple ministries that provide funding to Haldeman and Norfolk.
And that's no problem, Mr. Chair. It's all, you can look at something and isolate it and make a comment and make a very good argument, but there's also the flip side. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Robichaud?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just did want to point out that the total health unit budget is $9.8 million, 7.2 of which comes from the province. Expenditures are up 1.8%. In order to bring, it is the shift of approximately $184,000 of costs from the provincial level to the local level that is causing the large levy increase, not the expenditure budget being up. And when you have 7.3 of the total $9.8 million budget funded by the province, then in order to go through and slash expenditures to get the levy impact to Haldeman Norfolk to 2 to 5% would be a Herculean task, and would put basically every program in kind of a challenge of being out of step with the provincial mandate. So that would be, I'm not sure, a challenge how the health unit staff and the GM would ever be able to tackle that reasonably.
Councillor Columbus?
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask the same question that Councillor Wells asked, but Marlene, what can you live with? What percentage can you live with? Is there any fat you can cut off that large percentage?
Through the mayor to Councillor Columbus, it's hard to determine a percentage because as our county manager has just advised, that percentages for the levy impact is significantly more because of the cost sharing that's done with Haldeman. It would be probably easier, I mean, there isn't really fat in it. It would probably be easier to get a number and then work towards trying to achieve that number as we did last year through budget deliberations.
Thank you.
Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As all of the discussion was going on, I was trying to make sense of this piece of paper that was handed out to us this morning, which compares us to all of the other health units, I think, across, from the looks of it, South and Eastern Ontario. So a question to Ms. Miranda, as I looked across at the Haldeman-Norfolk line, which is up near the top, can you just explain to us in 30 seconds or less how we compare with averages? Because you go across to the extreme right side of the chart where it's 2016, I presume approved, actuals in a sense, and many of the other health units are showing relative to the model share, I think, provincial funding at above what was the proposed cost share, if that's how I'm reading the chart correctly. Whereas we're at 98.23% of what the model would have dictated should have been the case. Is that the correct way to read this? And if not, please explain it.
Through the mayor to Councillor Oliver, I just don't have the document in front of me right now, so if I could just defer and I'll answer the question in a few minutes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Height?
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I will be supporting this motion. There's other municipalities that are in the same boat. They make the tough decisions to get the cost down. There's 26 other health units that didn't receive any funding either. And I don't know that they're receiving such a healthy levy to support their budget, but I think the province would just come back to us and say, you need to tell your staff to come within the mandate of this provincially funded program. By making this tough decision now, we can put more pressure on the province. If there isn't enough funding, maybe the public will be upset enough to call the province instead of calling their local councillors who take heat for adding to this tax levy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sonnenberg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is our job around this table to run this county as efficiently as possible. To the motion to save money. I will save money by not burying wires. I will save money by not fixing 150-year-old dams. I will save money by not paving parking lots, but I will not cut health and social services where people's health is at risk. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Brunton, please.
Well, Your Worship, I'm going to go back to it one more time, and that is, when we did the audit, if you read in the audit, it said that you do the best you can with the funds you get. That was right in the audit report. So we have all these, I think it's 3.93 people that work in the smoking program. What they do is beyond me, but you see the mileage in here, the cost to the program. How can we continue to do the province job? First of all, I think the program's a waste of money. If people want to smoke, fine, but the province are not going to come out here, and I know you had a bunch of mandates in there. We have to visit every school twice a year, or we have to visit every place that sells cigarettes and put some teenager in the store that's underage to see if he gets caught picking up cigarettes. Yeah, the province would want you to do the best you can, but I don't think because we miss a couple of school dates or we miss going in some store that they're going to come down here and throw us all in jail. It's gotten out of hand, and we continue to put money into it, and it's the province's problem. And Councillor Height hit it right on the head. Maybe people will react. Maybe if everybody starts smoking, the province might come down here and give us more money. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Black.
Mayor Luke, through you to County Manager. I think this has been said before as well. Would it be more appropriate to deal with this at a higher level, either direct contact with the province or through our organization of AMO, Association of Municipalities of Ontario? I know they do. We pay fees, we're a member. They do fight on our behalf, and they have a large staff. And even if any councillor has gone to the AMO meetings, there is an opportunity there to speak to the various ministers in regards to the concerns we have. Would it not be more appropriately to address this problem more directly that way, taking that route?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think you're on the right track, absolutely, Councillor Black. One of the serious issues here is that I'm not sure, we have these ministries that do operate in their silos, and sometimes, unfortunately, there's no one there to integrate and provide the big picture overall. So you've got a situation going on right now where the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, which is Minister Hoskins' ministry, is pulling money essentially away from rural health units and allocating it to urban health units because they've been effective in suggesting that they're facing all the population growth and the demand for these programs. And in one sense, it's hard to argue with that. But they're doing that in isolation of the fact that most rural municipalities that support a health unit have just suffered through significant cutbacks in their Ontario Municipal Partnership funding over the past 5 years. And the Ministry of Health hasn't even considered that. And what's happened is a lot of the social services and public health uploading that the province done has, over the past 5 years, most rural municipalities have lost ground because of the reduction in the OMPF funding. So here you have the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care making a dysfunctional decision to reallocate their resources without having that backdrop of the overall intergovernmental fiscal arrangements between the province and municipalities. It does take politicians advocating and explaining that to people like the minister for that to be understood. Absolutely.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead, Councillor Columbus, but I would like to get on with this motion.
Mr. Mayor,
I would like then to eat, and then we'll come back to this page. Councillor Columbus?
this increase could actually be worse. We're fortunate that we can share a medical officer health with other communities, right? And so it could be worse. But the name Mr. Hoskins was mentioned, and he is a local person. I think we should be lobbying the province and AMO and rural municipalities of Ontario, anybody we can, to address this issue with respect to these unpredicted increases.
There is a motion on the floor to send this, public health budget back to staff to reduce it in the range of 2 to 5% on the levy impact. Yes, sorry. Okay, I'll call the question. Those in favor? 1, 2. Those opposed? Okay, the motion is defeated. Let's have lunch. It's been ready for about 25 minutes. Yes? Yeah, okay, I'll give you one question and then I want to move on. Put your microphone on, please, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Go look at this sheet and go, if you look at the very beginning, it says Brant County, and you go all the way over to 2016, their grant was $6,256,500, and then you go down to Haldeman, Norfolk, which is probably twice the size of Brant, and we get $4,155,300. How does that work out?
Our county manager is telling me that Brant County also includes the city of Brantford. Correct? Yes. Yes. We're going to have a break.
Thank you.
We're going to come back here at 1 o'clock.